My name is Jeff Cross. I'm the Media Director for ISSA, and I'm here at the beginning of the webinar to introduce our speakers and the topic, and I'll be back at the end for a Q&A. But our topic today is future-proofing facility care. You can see it on the screen there, supply chain strategies for tomorrow. But before we get into the content, let's talk about a couple of housekeeping issues. Be sure to put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A portal. You're here to learn. You want to get some ideas. This is your opportunity. So whatever you put in there, we'll keep an eye on and we'll try to address during the webinar. If we can't get to every question, well, we'll be able to follow up with you later on with that information. And if you have to skip out early or maybe you're not here and you registered, well, if you're not here, you don't hear this right now, but you will get a copy of this recording. So if you've registered for this webinar, you'll get an email with the recording. It'll also be on cmmonline.com as well. So if you don't get that email or maybe you delete it, it'll always be on cmmonline.com, a copy of this recording. Be sure today to cheer on the presenters because they're going to do a great job and you are muted. So make all the noise you want. Doesn't matter what you do at your end. We will see the chat. If you say something in there, we're going to see it forever. So keep that in mind as well. And remember, this presentation is for you. It's for you to take notes, to ask questions, to engage and enjoy. So sit back and do that. And as we think about this topic, future-proofing facility care, let's officially start with our overview of the program today. And as you look at this slide, the overview, as I see it, and you might as well, the rules of supply and demand are shifting faster than ever. And those who cling to yesterday's strategies are just going to be left behind, left scrambling. We don't want you to do that. So you're here today to learn and to get the most out of this. We think about that this is more than just surviving. It's about staying ahead. And you can see the core focus points on the screen. And this is no doubt what you need. A lot of actionable words here. So get ready to discover how to build or enhance a supply chain that not only weathers disruptions, but even thrives on them. So here we go. This is the playbook for your future. And let's meet our panelists now. We have with us Chris Martin. He's a Senior Vice President of Global Operations. Chris, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Excited to be here and happy to be part of this discussion.
We have Mark Diani, the Vice President of Corporate Accounts at Veritiv as well. Mark.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. Glad to be doing this with Chris. And thanks to ISSA for inviting us to do it.
Absolutely. I think Mark and Chris work well together. Mark's going to kick it off for us, but maybe as they begin, they could, if they'd like to share a little bit about themselves as they get into their part of the presentation. So if you two are ready, I'll turn it over to you and I'll see you in a while for the Q&A. Sound good?
Okay. I've been with Veritiv for 38 years. I'm a lifer here. I've been in the corporate account team since 2002. And we deal in that world, we're dealing with large multi-regional, multi-million-dollar customers across all customer verticals, whether they're property management, BSCs, or dealing with large health entertainment companies like Disney World. So that's basically what my team does. We work very closely with Chris and Chris's team in operations to really drive successful relationships with our customers. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Chris Martin. I've been with Veritiv now for 12 years. Prior to that, I worked in consulting with Deloitte Consulting and strategy and operations, worked with Aldi Foods as a district manager, and first job out of school was an officer in the Navy. So I've kind of had a broad swath of different positions, both prior to and within Veritiv. I've had roles in strategy and marketing, sales and operations, leadership, general management, large scale project management, and most recently leading our global operations teams. And I think it's important to note that at Veritiv here, we consider there are two types of employees. There's those who service the customer directly and those who support those who service the customers directly. And I'm happy to be a big part of that second group with people on my team, whether it's our drivers and supporting Mark and the sales teams who service the customers directly. So Mark, I think we can get into the
Yeah. So you're going to hear Chris and I say the term integrated supply chain probably many times. And so when people think supply chain, if you look at these circles that are on this slide, people look at the bottom circle and they think that's supply chain, right? Warehouse and logistics efficiency. But reality is in today's world, when you think about labor shortages, when you think about really future-proofing our business, as we talked about, particularly after the pandemic, it really encompasses a lot more of your cross-functional teams in a company to create that integrated supply chain that's going to help drive your customers' experience. Certainly technology is a huge part of that, not only in the front end when you're dealing with customers and putting together programs, but also in the back end, which Chris will talk about later, some of the technology that we're using really to build our business and build our success. Safety. I mean, again, with labor issues as tight as they are, you want your people safe. You can't afford to have them out. You also want them to be happy to work there, knowing that they're going to go home every night healthy and safe to their families, right? But ultimately, all of that comes down to, can we drive out costs? Can we meet the new government regulations that continue to come in, mostly on a statewide basis? And obviously, there's this lurking thing called sustainability, which comes in and out of conversations depending on where you are and depending on the part of the country that you're really in the types of customers that you're dealing with. But it is an ongoing conversation that's very fluid, not only from a regulatory standpoint, but also from a product and service standpoint as well. But all of this makes up what we refer to as an integrated supply chain. So just some industry trends that we're seeing. We talked about sustainability. As much as it can be from a lot regional in many cases, a lot of it's being driven by consumer interest because of climate change. We've seen some pretty crazy weather in this last 6 or 7 months. And a lot of that is driving interest in sustainability and how we can help drive a better future. Generationally and demographically, it's a big deal. I think my kids who are in their 20s, they grew up with sustainability, but beyond that, the younger generations are going to be more trained on sustainability and aspects of that as they look at it and how it's going to impact their future. You're seeing governmental regulations, mostly at the state level. Federal level is kind of laid off, obviously with the new administration, but the state level continues to push forward in many states with new regulations on single-use plastics and many other types of products. And I think for a lot of us, we're not sure where it means or where to start, right? It's a kind of a big subject to deal with. And we're all trying to get our arms around it, what it means to our customers, what it means to our business long-term. Again, Chris has some things that he's working on, that Veritiv's working on, that he'll talk about later. That may give you some ideas on your business as well. Inflation is another one. Obviously, it's been in the news now for 3 or 4 years. That 66% is actually a consumer number. I would say in my daily life, it's probably more like 80+% in a B2B world. The pressure that's on all of you from your customers, your end-use customers, on price is significant. We've seen a massive increase in formal RFPs as people come out of the pandemic. There was significant inflation in price escalation. Now they're looking to right-size their business. So we've had to defend quite a bit of business. And I'm sure all of you have done the same thing. Customer expectations, demand, more expedited service. I mean, again, the labor issues I keep talking about, they're also having labor issues as well, right? So they're leaning on us more than ever to provide that level of service that they need. They want better reporting and more timely reporting. So they know what they're doing. If they have budgets to meet, they want to know when they're on budgets and when they're not. And define standards for clean and safe properties, right? They want to know that they're, like I mentioned earlier, that people their employees are safe as well. And they want all of that tied up in lower costs, right? So there's a lot of pressure on all of us to succeed, and having an integrated supply chain is the best way to do that. And really, if you think about it, you got to have suppliers that are partners. It's no longer reasonable to expect a supplier just to deliver a product on time. They're going to be part of your business. They have to understand who your end use customers are. You have to understand the solutions that are going to help you win in the marketplace. If suppliers are not helping you win and grow your business, they're not really truly a partner who understands your business. And you got to constantly innovate and create quality of service. And efficiency means improved productivity. Again, with labor issues that I mentioned, how do you drive higher levels of productivity? That represents lower costs. Ultimately, that's what we're seeing in the industry today. Gwen?
And Mark, I'll jump in here real quick too, just to speak on that last point about the integrated supply chain. Just what we're seeing, and I'm sure you all are seeing as well, is just as we've come out of what seems like light years ago now, the pandemic, and just the evolution of that relationship and how important it is to share data and interpret data and understand it and share it in insightful and in actionable ways, not only internally with your teams, with your customers, but as importantly with our suppliers. That's a key point and a through line you'll hear throughout this conversation, as I'm sure you're experiencing as well.
Yeah. So this is an interesting slide. We sort of put in at the end. We talk about they're expecting more, expecting more at lower costs. Well, if you the way this slide reads is it's the last 5 years, and it's a percentage of contractors or facilities managers that are now being asked and required to also procure the product and have the supply chain and the supply base to be able to supply them with the products and dispensers that they need to run their business. And you can see from the return from the pandemic, a significant jump in what's expected from contractors and facilities managers, from their end use customers to really deliver the whole package. And obviously it's prevalent across all of the different product categories, but certainly when you see chemicals, sanitizer, soaps, that is a big part of what's driving a lot of the activity that's probably relatively new to a lot of you, and having to build out different supply chains for your business going forward. Moving on. So one of the things we talk about is having flexible programs. Now we want to try and simplify supply chains as well. So control the controllables, right? If you can build out a supply base that standardizes your products and your dispensing, maybe a good, better, best approach. So you have sort of a functional way to look at your business based on the types of customers that you're calling on. If you can standardize procedures in your business and have training to back that up. So as you bring on new employees, you got consistent training on consistent products. Those are the things that are sort of controllable in the business. And if those are controllable, then it allows you to be more flexible with your customers, right? It allows you to give them sort of that unique one-off solution outside of those controlled assets that you have to be able to deliver that higher level of service, that customer experience that all our customers are expecting. So it seems counterintuitive to want to simplify your supply chains, but then be flexible. But if you can control the controllables, then it allows you then to go drive more flexible programs and more value to your customers to help them with their business. Moving on. Reliable relationships. Vetting your network of suppliers is super important. I think a lot of us learned during the pandemic that you can't be sole sourced. You got to have redundancies in supply. They've got to be vetted. They got to be able to future-proof their business to be able to support you. You got to know that when things get difficult, they have your back. And that's the most important thing about really vetting your supply chain and building those reliable relationships. Chris and I talk about this all the time. You want to be important to customers, but you don't want to be sole source, right? So you got to be able to have, the right number of suppliers to have value to them, but not too many that you've kind of watered everything down. You're not really getting any support. And also how you build out your contracts and how you build out the commitments in those contracts in a two-way basis that ensures your suppliers are getting what they need while you're getting what you need, particularly when things get difficult in the supply chain. Very important to build sort of a reliable relationship with your supplier network. Moving on. Digital connectivity. I mean, I think I talked about earlier about on time and better reporting. Customers want to know what they need to know, and they want to know it quickly, right? So if you can build out as part of your supply chain an integration between the front end of your system to the back end, so that your customers can see and feel the kind of service that you're delivering to them every single day. Digital connectivity is the best way to do that, because you're driving all things to a single portal. As you take on more activity and more responsibility for your customers, what will happen is you won't have enough time or people to be able to do all the activity. I always say if in some respects, if it's manual, it's broken, right? In the world of digital connectivity, you want to be able to drive as much electronic activity as you possibly can to be able to smooth out your supply chain and also create productivity for the labor that you have, right? I mean, you see how the digital world can drive higher levels of productivity from your employees. Well, they're not doing minimal tasks. They're really focused on the customer and the customer relationship and building that supply chain that creates that excellent customer experience. Moving on. Yep. And monitoring spend. I mean, at the end of the day, our customers are expecting us to do that. At Veritiv, we look at lean cleaning as a way to do that. Are there better ways to reduce material costs, minimize waste, improve efficiencies, and consolidate activities, right, in a more streamlined fashion? So you create that level of productivity, but you also create a guaranteed cost stream for your customers where you can make commitments to them, and by monitoring your spend and monitoring their spend, which makes you that much more valuable to them. No one likes to have a budget and then at the end on the 31st of the month find out they're surprised that they're over budget, right? You want to be able to monitor that, understand where the labor efficiencies are coming from. If they're overusing materials like towel and tissue or chemicals, that you're monitoring that for them and that they understand that that's coming their way, so there's no surprise. So this is a very important part of the integrated supply chain, is really monitoring the overall spend and creating more productive employees. Moving on.
Yeah, so
this is yours, right?
Yeah, that's right. This is the part where, as we're thinking about automation, as you guys are thinking about automation and how it applies to your business and your customer's business. I thought I'd share kind of a case study of our journey thus far, and it is very much a journey, not a destination, with enabling growth through innovation. My boss, our CEO, several times over the last several years is notorious for sending pictures of engaging with automation and engaging with robotics as a customer. So I tell the story where I got a text from him as he was sitting at a Chick-fil-A, sending me as a Chick-fil-A robot was delivering his sandwich to him. He said, "Chris, we got to get this into our business." To which I had to remind him that we're not delivering sandwiches. We're delivering usually large pallets of product. But historically, in our industry and in our business, a lot of the automation is now in smaller piece pick and pack kind of environments, or like Amazon kind of environments. And we've looked at it and kind of said we've tried to look at it a couple different ways, and just thought it's not quite ready for us. We've really scrapped that over the last 3 years and just realized you have to automate, you have to innovate to just survive, and also to provide the value, all the value streams that Mark was highlighting for your business as well as for your customers. Obviously, ultimately improving the cost to serve to enable growth. But our journey has really been one of kind of taking it took a small team, a cross-functional team within our company, to really look at and go find different applications that can solve, or find problem statements before we find the application, find issues that we've had a hard time unlocking, whether it's repetitive task or labor intensive, thinking about our employees first and the safety first, as well as our customers, and where can we really scratch at that. And we've taken what I call our hourglass approach to automation and innovation, which is think really broadly to start about what are the big issues, and let's think about tackling them. Let's not limit ourselves on the trials or the challenges of the past, but really kind of focus on what is in front of us and what can we go do. Look for a broad application of opportunities, go find ways on opportunities, whether through trade shows or through different vendors, to go identify some of those solutions. Get narrow. The narrow part of the hourglass is get narrow in terms of your application, where you're going to find an ROI on any one of these things, and then figure out a way to, we call it our test fast, fail fast, and scale fast approach to technology and automation, so that once you find something that does work, figure out a way to broadly scale that in a way that makes sense. In our business, that comes in the form of some of these different areas that I'll highlight. We have a full pipeline full of different ideas in that top end of the hourglass, and these are some that have really come to fruition over the last 2 years, and some of them even in the last 6 months. So I'll kind of walk across the screen and just describe them again. Not necessarily that it's all applicable to everybody on this call's business directly, but maybe just the approach and how we looked at it is helpful. So the first was just teleoperations. In our warehouses, we have a lot of, tenured workforce in some of our warehouses, and we're handling equipment. They're handling big, heavy equipment, and it's also, they're not getting any faster at that, and there's not always, the labor pool isn't always getting bigger as we go. So we partnered with one of our key partners in our freight side of our business, ArcBest, who has a emerging technology and innovation side of their business, to look at material handling equipment. And we were able to find teleoperations. So these are literally what you're looking at there on the left side is a picture within one of our warehouses of an employee who is normally a material handler. of equipment, and he is operating like a video game using what looks like an Xbox controller. He's actually taking once the material handling equipment, it navigates seamlessly. It doesn't have to be on a guideline or anything like that. It just automates autonomously to the position in the racking where it needs to put the product away. And then it engages and alerts him so that he can go guide it up into the exact position and make sure it smoothly goes in and out. That's something we've been scaling for the last couple of months, and we're looking at actually adding to that. And it's been a great example of solving not only for a problem, but then retraining the team, being able to repurpose what they're doing. Because if you think about the scale impact of that, that no matter where that person is, they could possibly be operating, dozens of different material handling equipment at different warehouses. We're not quite at that point yet, but instead of waiting for us to get to that point, we wanted to test it and see how it goes. Delivery automation, we are actually testing right now. It's more in our transfer network versus our customer delivery network, where we are testing truly automated trucks, where it's driving, without a driver. Now, ironically, both of those until recently, they're both in Texas. There are 50 of these in the entire country, and we have 2 of them right now that we're piloting, which is pretty exciting for us. But ironically, for the first year or so of this, there actually is somebody sitting in the passenger seat called a safety monitor, riding the autonomous truck. So we like to jokingly say, how many drivers do you have in your autonomous truck? But this has been an area that we're looking at. It does several things for us. Not only does it help combat nightly transfers, where it's maybe harder to find some drivers who want to work those kind of hours or want to do that, but figuring out how to put them in a way that helps us more sustainably automate the trucks, and also the technology itself, how it can apply to lower emission vehicles as well. So that's something we're actually piloting right now. I still call that in the middle of the hourglass approach. Looking at AI and how we
Hey, Chris, I'm going to add something. For the first time ever, I was in an automated car this weekend.
Yeah.
And I was with my brother-in-law, and we're driving down the street for about 15 minutes. And he said to me, by the way, I have not been driving this entire time. It sort of kind of freaked me out a little bit, that you couldn't tell any difference at all. It's amazing. It really is amazing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's exciting. These are big, in our business, these are predominantly bigger vehicles and tractor trailers, 53 footers and 48 footers. So those are big, heavy, as we like to say, weapons. I've got a teenage daughter, so we do call them weapons sometimes, and we're referring to the big trucks on the road that we can more safely and more efficiently operate those. On the artificial intelligence side, as you guys, I'm sure, are all seeing and hearing a lot about how to scale and use artificial intelligence in the business, we're right there in that same pool, and it's a journey we've been on for the last couple of years. And there's several applications. One that we're highlighting here is in our routing system. We have dynamic routing capabilities where we centrally route all of our vehicles and deliveries and resources and assets. And this has been a technology that we've been deploying alongside our human routers to really find opportunities and savings in terms of mileage and hitting time windows and expectations for customer deliveries that we've been able to do. And on top of that, we've been able to load the information into a new tool called Freight Intel, where they actually just dynamically, as we use third-party lanes across the country, we are able to load in all that data, and very much in real time, it can alert us and say, hey, you're paying X above market for this route. You should highlight this and find out if there's a different, more cost-effective, and here are some opportunities you can do that. So we're finding different ways to apply AI. We've also looked at it in terms of negotiating with vendors and tail spend through different vendors. So it's an exciting area for us. As is anything, it can become overwhelming in terms of how you even start or how you jump into it. But we're again, same thing with the hourglass approach, trying to find a structured way to get all the ideas you can, make sure you apply them to prioritize business opportunities, and then figure out how to go through and test them. And if they fail, we've had more of these that have maybe not worked out at an earlier stage that we were able to quickly disqualify, including this last one in the robotics automation within our warehouse. We started working with vendors where we were getting a lot more floor-loaded containers into our warehouses coming from overseas. And for anybody who's operated in that kind of environment, regardless of what location you are, whether it's Phoenix or Florida or the Northeast, you typically get those containers coming in, over 100 degrees of temperature inside, and you're sending in, your team members to go unload that, hand unload it, and palletize that product before you can put it away. we saw a great opportunity and application. So we worked with this company called Picklebot early on, and we had them do an analysis and help us kind of come alongside of us and look at all of our data and look at the opportunity. And as a company who's trying to sell their technology, they were very honest with us, speaking back to the reliable relationships part that Mark was talking about. We worked with them and they kind of came back to us and said, you know what, based on your scale, it only makes sense to try to deploy this into one location based on your volume. And right now you don't have the capability because of the size of the space that you're in. So that was when we kind of put on pause. And as we already had plans to move into a larger location in that market. So we made that part of our new building plans and have now implemented that as of earlier this year to test what's called Picklebot, which is just a robotic arm that seamlessly unloads those, puts it on a conveyor belt. It moves itself. Now we're trying to work through the parts of, on the other end of that, there still has to be humans, palletizing and how we can really scale that and what the actual ROI is on that. But again, I think this is highlighting just opportunities, maybe not whether or not they're specific to potential opportunities for you, but more just the approach and how we're looking at different ways to automate within our supply chain. And then going to the next slide. So those are kind of the new fun ideas that we're doing and looking at. But as we step back and looked at, we're collecting a lot of data. We've been collecting a lot of data within our systems as we get, whether it's our labor resources, our team members, whether it's our assets and trucks or the warehouse utilization. These are all areas that we've been, over the course of our business, collecting a lot of data on and creating a lot of dashboards that, many of our team members and operators can look at and kind of chime into, but we didn't have a way to necessarily funnel it all together. So we've really taken over the last 2 to 3 years, made sure we funnel all that information into very digestible ways, not just for executive dashboards, so I can look in and see what the utilization of certain assets are, but really to train our team members on the ground to understand what the data is and give them guidance on how to use that data when it comes to planning the labor for their facility or for shifts, to anticipate demand forecasts. We have trackers in our trucks that now links into a system that allows customers can sign up for live updates of where their order is as it's delivering. We're also expanding that to be whenever we manage or have to maybe use outside carriers or third party, it can still track that as well. So really, this has been a journey that we've been on where we're able to track the movement of employees within the facility, find time where they're not touching product or adding value versus time where they're either taking breaks or possibly not being where we want them to be, whether there's material handling equipment that's not being utilized, right? We have excess material that's all cost or capital that's cash is being tied up in every one of those resources. We find it as a benefit not only to us, but to our customers to find those opportunities and drive that cash to where it needs to go, which is to provide value and innovation to our customers through our products and services. And this is just kind of a journey of how we've been looking and being able to deploy that across teams. And we really look at that as our team members. We believe that safe employees are engaged employees, are productive employees, right? So too many times if we had too many people sitting around, that's usually where accidents happen, when they're not being fully utilized, or you lose your best talent in terms of how they're engaged. Most of our team members, we find our best team members want to come in, they want to earn a good wage, they want to provide value to what they're doing, and they want to kind of be sweating at the end of the day, but feel good and feel safe as they return home. And so we've really, again, focused the effort on our customer experience, our employee experience, in order to drive a better financial and cost to serve for our customers too. And so it's yielded a lot of great benefits to the tune of a 50%, just over the last 2 years, 50% improvement in our labor productivity within our warehouses too. So it's exciting applications that, again, as we look at it, how we apply this to customer facing metrics, as well as how we manage it internally to be more efficient, which ultimately does drive that customer experience as well. And then the last thing, on the last slide, the last kind of material, we talked a lot about sustainability, which I know is an important aspect of everybody's life right now, whether it's at the state level or the national level. We've continued to look at, and I know that while there's mandates that come down about the percentage or commitments that are made by different companies about the percentage that will be electric or alternative fuel, we've really taken we want to put a stake in the ground and not just be a headline, but live by what we say we're going to do, and really apply good practices that drive better, a better partner on the planet, as well as for our customers and for our business. And the ways we've done that, and kind of the line we've drawn in the sand, has been around our decarbonization In our business, our trucks and our facilities drive the largest. We are the largest user of greenhouse gas within our company, and so we don't want to just sell sustainable products. We want to practice what we preach and make sure that we are a good partner that's living by the code. And so with our greenhouse gas emissions, that's been, again, as we look at our fleet, the utilization of our trucks, as I mentioned on the last slide, being able to track that data, it's allowed us to become much more effective in how we deploy that. We've deployed different technologies even within our cabs, trucks that have cameras that face both outward and inward, but also are tracking idle speed when we give idle time and making sure it shuts off, while some of our drivers in some of the hotter climates don't like to turn off the air conditioning in some of those while they're waiting. It actually saves every one of those minutes saved off the gas, saves a lot of gas. And then it also provides us the opportunity to redeploy those assets and those trucks into different markets in different ways too. So we're really proud to say that we've been able to reduce that, again, just by focusing, measuring it, and putting it into the hands of our team members in a way that they can interpret it and react to it in live time. And we've also put, speed governors on, so that, we found the optimal speeds and fuel efficiency on all of our tractors, and we have actually set a maximum speed for all those so that we never exceed that, both for safety as well as for the gas emission part of this. So it's a big deal. It's a big commitment we've made, and continue to be on that track to use alternative fuel vehicles as well. We do have 2 electric vehicles in our fleet. They are in the state of California, where we found, obviously, most of the regulations and requirements have come into place, but we're also still challenged, as I'm sure you all are aware of, some of the grid and some of the infrastructure available to actually commit to that. So just ways that we're looking at multiple different ways to approach this, again, from an hourglass perspective. Think broadly about how you're identifying solutions, and then go narrow as you're looking at the return and the action you're going to take. And then the last side of this, sorry, if you can go back to the previous slide, our waste diversion program. So this is something that, as we've talked to different companies, and I know it's something that it seems kind of obvious, but as we've looked at just the use of diverting waste to non-landfill and finding recyclability and refining different ways, we've really put a line in the sand to say we're going to improve this up to 70%. And it's really interesting, as we talk to customers, as we talk to vendors, as we talk to other peer companies. It's funny because we kind of say, hey, where are you at? We're at about 10%. And I say, that's where we started too. And they say, yeah, it's just really hard. And they say, actually, we've been able to make a lot of strides that we're at 60%, and their eyes kind of light up like, how did that happen? And it's not necessarily a point of, any brilliant innovation we came up with. It was just a matter of, again, drawing that line in the sand and saying, this is something that's important to us. There is cost savings to be achieved through it, but it helps fulfill some of the commitments that we've made to ourselves and to our customers as well. I see a question here. Can you go into what you're doing to increase your waste diversion? Absolutely. So we've really, it started with just adding a formalized, through centrally managed programs, adding recycling at all of our locations. In different locations, as Mark said, sometimes the state regulations are a little less stringent, and so there wasn't necessarily an apparent ROI to an individual location to invest in this. They would just, they had their pickup, it didn't cost anything, and in some cases, it might have even increased the cost at that particular location to add in a recycling program. And so we've made that, we've mandated that, we've rolled it out across all of our locations, and it really has added to our waste diversion efficiency and effectiveness across all of our sites.
Hey, Chris, I just want to add how we translate that to our customer experience. Disney World is a customer of ours in Orlando. You can imagine how many disposable vinyl gloves they use. So we've built out a waste diversion program with them, where all of their employees basically drop their gloves into containers, which then get centrally moved into their warehouse. We then pick it up, bring it back to our Lakeland facility, and then deliver it back to the manufacturer, who then reconstitutes it for some other purpose, right? So waste diversion can be something that we live every day as an internal Veritiv thing, but also how do we turn that onto our customers and find solutions for that, help them with waste diversion as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. That's a great point. We're trying to look at where our assets are coming back. Most of the time when we're coming back from the end of a route of customer deliveries, we've got empty trucks that are coming back. How do we utilize that format to leverage our recycling programs in the markets that we have them? It's a really big deal. And I think that's it for as far as the content goes. Yeah, and this is another, again, part of the function. I focus more on kind of our facility management side of things within our facilities, but with that data, and as we're looking at continuing to evolve how we buy and how we help forecast our demands, so that we can be a better partner for our suppliers and help them forecast when in their production cycles to have product available. Again, having collaborative conversations with our customers as well, and being able to pull that. And we're proud to say that we've had a 95% fill rate for our products to our customers, even throughout the pandemic. It's one of our values as a distributor that we're maybe not necessarily manufacturing the product, but we're able to mitigate it through our inventory programs. We have to manage that cash smartly or in a balanced way, but we're proud to kind of represent this. But again, it all comes back to the integrated supply chain and really being a partner to your partners, right? Both of the customers and with the suppliers, we want to feed that back and forth.
Yeah, when I mentioned reliable relationships earlier, I mean, Chris's team has built out LOTC, lines on time complete, with our suppliers. So our suppliers like Kimberly-Clark and Diversity and others, we have those conversations every single month with them about the performance. Now, we don't use it as a way to penalize them, or it's not something that we're looking to do in that regard. But you really can't understand a problem unless you measure it, right? So, and honestly, I would say, Chris, that's relatively new for us. I mean, at least doing it in the way that we're doing it today, in the sense that we're really becomes part of the everyday conversation to build those reliable relationships over time, really by measuring the success that we're having or not having, and then putting solutions in place to fix it.
Yeah, Mark, and just to add on that, just because it's a theme throughout all of this, is same thing with our data within our the different things we track. This was data that we had, we just weren't, and we were maybe tracking internally, but to Mark's point, we weren't necessarily formalizing it and making it a mutual conversation with our suppliers as formally as we would like to. And as we've enhanced that process and that relationship, and being more important to several suppliers, but fewer suppliers versus everybody, it's allowed us to drive more meaningful conversations around that and say, so how are you guys measuring that? Because we had a totally different measure that we thought we were doing great with, and so we can really match through that and improve that. And we've seen significant. We were just reviewing the internship program, and one of our interns was managing this program where they took one of our worst performing line on time complete vendors within this area, from 58% up to over 85% over the course of an 8-week internship project. So again, it speaks to the value of data and bringing that forward into the conversations. With that, I think we're opening up. I appreciate, Alicia, your questions, but I think we're opening up to questions now.
Mm-hmm. We can take down the slide deck and just look at us. Chris, Mark, that was great. Nice job. You had me at Disney. So who has that account, and can I get some tickets?
You were not the first person who's asked that question.
Believe it or not, Mark's a popular guy.
Is it one of those questions like when you're washing windows, someone says, "Hey, come to my house next"? One of those questions?
More or less, yes. Yep.
Even with a discount, it'd probably still be pricey, but it's worth it. I've been there
exactly.
Times. But I like that, what you have set up there to make it easy for them to recycle what they're using, because you have to make it easy on the customer. If you don't make it easy, they're not going to do it. That's how
and I think to the comments that we made earlier around being part of your customer's business. Mm-hmm. I mean, they are obviously a big user of a lot of products, and they have a lot of pressure from a lot of government and non-government organizations around their waste stream and what they do every day, right? So when we have a meeting next week with them, actually, it's our annual meeting. It's about a 2 or 3 hour meeting. It includes our operations people, the sustainability people, the sourcing people, some of the park services people, and we get into every part of their business to go try and find a way to integrate our supply chain into theirs, right? And create solutions that are important to them. And, I learned something last year, Jeff, that I had never known before, never even thought about. But there are more trucks driving around Orlando in Disney World every day than in the city of Los Angeles, right? So when we talk about use of and trying to reduce waste, there's a lot of opportunity to reduce waste. I don't know what they're that's not obviously part of our business, but it speaks to just how big they are and how important it is to them. So we're always trying to think of solutions and ideas to help them drive that waste reduction, that we're not only living it ourselves, but helping our customers do it as well. So.
And they chose to work with Veritiv on all this.
Yes, for a long time they've been with us. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have some questions that have come in. Some were part of the registration process. Are you both ready to get stumped?
Fire away.
Okay.
Maybe not stumped. Okay. Chris, we're going to start with you on this one.
Yeah.
And I know you did talk about automation with vehicles and all that, but the question is, what changes do you foresee in regards to how we transport freight? Electric, driverless trucks, and so on. And then after you're done, Chris, Mark, feel free to chime in on any of these too.
Yeah.
For the one guarantee is that change will constantly be there in this space, for particularly, right? I mentioned the journey on electric vehicles, right? There was a big push on that, and we're part of a lot of different councils and committees, with some of our vendor partners and some of our communities. And it's really interesting to hear a lot of our freight carrier partners who have, made big commitments and they mean it, but then as they kind of come up with kind of the reality of how that sets in and how that adjusts over time and how the investment in infrastructure in terms of the grid and those kind of things evolves. So again, for us, I believe that there will constantly be a change. There will probably be regulation before there is, infrastructure as we go. So it's trying to map it. One thing we know is within supply chain in general, things always default to the most efficient method, right, over time, and where those investments come from. And we see a lot of big carriers, both international as well as domestic carriers and manufacturers, really committing to making that a core part of their business. So it's important to, I think, be part of that conversation and make sure you're stepping forward and looking forward and not just waiting for it to come, and finding those strategies, whether it's, during lease renewals or how we're, introducing it in our mix, but also even just the number of carriers and how they're done. We're seeing a lot of changes within the freight world itself, and even vendors, big vendors that are making different choices within their business of, where to spin off and where to look at things too. So we know that there will be change. We know that staying engaged with it and monitoring and having, strategies that help you both adopt, as well as, potentially innovate with those partners. And it's tough, right? Because there's a lot of different vendors out there, a lot of different people. We go to places like ProMat every year, or the different, fun toys and gadgets and gadget conferences. And everybody, talks about how they're the next big thing. And you get 6 months to 12 months down the road and they sell to somebody else and it changes or just changes the dynamic of it. So you're kind of making bets along the way and do something that makes sense. And that's why we're kind of trying to be specific about what areas we look at, but it applies differently to everybody. So we know that'll continue to change.
And part of what I heard you say there is keep your eyes wide open because you need to know what's happening all the time.
That's right. Having a scope. And again, even if it's
Yeah.
it's not a dedicated resource necessarily, we have just one person looking at it, but we do have a team of people to kind of keep the eyes and ears open, to kind of bring those ideas in.
Mm-hmm. Mark, anything to add to that?
Well, I think that, from an innovation standpoint, again, from my perspective, I'm obviously dealing with customers, right? So when Chris talks about some of the ideas that we're trying to develop internally, how do we take that to the customer? In whether it's the sourcing team that reports up to Chris's team and what they're doing to find different products, different supply base, different materials that may be more sustainable. So there are multiple different things that we're thinking about all the time. Innovation is actually a part of the bonus structure at Veritiv from a sales perspective. Are you driving design capabilities with your customers? Maybe it's single-use products like to-go packaging, right? Are you driving different materials and different solutions that reduce the overall cost and creating a design using our design team to be able to create an innovative solution that's different for the customer and drives to some goal that they have, right? And that's important, right? So.
We have a question. Thank you, Mark. We have a question about asking for success stories or unique needs in the higher ed vertical that you can speak about. So that one just came in. There's no prep on this.
Yeah, I would say one area, and I was just there recently. I live in the Boston area. So up here we have a lot of colleges and universities, but not a lot of them are very big, right? So creating leverage and scale for them to create leverage and scale is difficult. So we've created actually a purchasing consortium for all the schools to be able to leverage their scale. We then bring that to our select manufacturer base and create a common program. So if you think about it from a supply chain standpoint, we're driving, a set number of SKUs to dozens of colleges and universities, and even some private prep school, high schools in the area. They get leverage and scale the entire buy. We're obviously driving more volume with fewer SKUs, right? So we can stock more inventory and have a higher level of service. So it sort of speaks to not only driving a better program for customers, but also integrating our supply chain capabilities and helping our customers be more successful by driving cost out and creating better productivity.
Nice. You guys see that big question in there?
I do. Yeah,
Okay.
the smaller, medium. Yeah, Nathan goes through the question about the smaller, medium-sized organizations. Maybe some of the concepts are out of reach and where to start. I really
First
think
steps.
without sounding too, obvious about it, I really think that having a team or having somebody within your team or having a group within your team that really does focus on, hey, what are those challenges that we have that are just they kind of nag us every day. They're tough. They're repetitive actions. They're maybe costly in terms of safety or quality issues. Is really looking out there and literally Googling or chat GPTing. Like there's a lot of different ways, or if you have access through interns or internship type programs, just having a small team or group of team within that is charged with making that part of your daily, monthly, weekly conversation and say, hey, what have you seen out there? That was literally how ours started, right? We went through years of us saying, paying way too much money for consultants to come in and do a quick engagement to tell us, yeah, it doesn't really apply to you yet. We just started by bringing the ideas together on a small basis, and we made that voice a little bit louder. We added a few more people and amplified the voice to it. So I think you can scale it. And in some ways, sometimes the smaller and medium size gives you the opportunity to as you're rapidly growing, to kind of test fast and fail fast a little bit faster and try things at a different pace. I hope that's helpful to answer that question.
Well, I would say, and you talked about going to some trade shows, and I would imagine some of those trade shows, not all of them are designed for large companies like Veritiv. They're designed obviously for entrepreneurial type companies too, who are trying to develop their own supply chain that has scale to it as they grow their business. I imagine there's a lot of that when you go to those trade shows, Chris.
That's right. Exactly right.
Let's see. Mark, there's a question that came in for you. What products sold by Veritiv are imported from other countries?
Actually, very few are as a percentage. We have, I mentioned food service disposables before. Quite a bit of that comes from overseas. Think about black bottom, clear top containers. Think about cutlery kits, that sort of thing. A lot of that is produced over in Asia. Obviously, there's a lot of geopolitical noise happening out there now. So we are changing. I'm working with Chris's team pretty hard on and creating those redundancies we talked about in our supply chain, so that we can protect ourselves against decisions that will be made that will be out of our control. And we're also looking back inward, obviously, to onshore in areas where we can create competitive programs that are domestically produced. There are limitations there. Certainly from a scale standpoint, manufacturers in the United States don't always have the capacity to handle some of the things that we buy overseas. And so that's an area where we do buy quite a bit internationally, which would be on the food service disposable side. But as a percentage, Chris, I mean, it's less than 5%. Right?
Less than 5% of our total portfolio right now.
Yeah.
And it's always right. It's a balance of, being cost competitive as well as being dependent. And it only takes a couple flickers, whether it's tariff threats or actual implementation, or just weather events. The Panama Canal is getting shallower at different times of the year, where all of a sudden that transit across the Panama Canal becomes a hazard to a potential business, or port strikes, or catastrophic events like the Baltimore Bridge that caves and creates a capacity constraint there. So it's continued to remind us in terms of not being surprised by those kind of events, to make sure you have a diversified portfolio of products. Easier said than done, obviously, but again, I think it's really about focusing on where you add value and where there's opportunity to spread that, and not just being sole source, as Mark said earlier, but finding, you don't want to be sourced, to 10 to 15 different if you can avoid it, but focus on those few that you can be more important to and really kind of leverage and add value for them as well. There's certain parts of the business that they may not be as applicable for them to go after.
And the other area, Jeff, is PPE, personal protective equipment. I mean, that is gloves, masks, that sort of thing. That's been manufactured overseas almost exclusively for years and years and years. Obviously, we felt that pain during the pandemic. There are other Asian countries, they continue to be produced in Asia, but there are other Asian countries that have now sped up their production. So it's now not so centrally driven to China. It is there's opportunities in Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, to bring capacity to them, and again have that redundancy in our supply chain, so we're not solely reliant on one source of supply.
Yeah, this is the third time this week I've done a few videos and interviews that the geopolitical situation came up in conversation. You just don't know. Got to be ready for whatever comes your way.
I mean, the reality is right now China still is given their efficiency and given the efficiency not only in producing product, but also in their supply chain, even with the heavy burden of tariffs, which everyone's feeling tariffs now, but they're feeling obviously the heaviest burden, they're still very cost competitive. Now, the issue you have with China is what's next, right? Given the relationship between the US and China, we have to diversify our international sourcing outside of China to have that redundancy that we keep talking about.
Absolutely. Chris, the next one's for you, and it's this one. As automation takes over repetitive tasks, how are you rethinking workforce development and employee value creation? And are you investing in reskilling programs to avoid a talent vacuum? Whew, that's a question.
That's a big one, yeah, and it's really important. Again, part of our core values is starting with the customer at the center of everything, and we believe that we best service our customers with engaged employees. And so it is both, right? It's not an either or, it's an and for us. And so as part of our evaluation process, and even as you saw with some of the teleoperated equipment, right, is that what we're finding is that it's not necessarily replacing jobs that currently exist. It's helping us with attrition as employees age out or as employees retire. We're able to find the efficiency through these automation and help train the skill for operating the equipment or operating the new technology. But we see it, at least at this point, as that seems to be where we can do that. We garner that. We have a lot of programs, whether it's safety or otherwise, or just continuous improvement ideas that we get from the field. I don't know about everybody else on this call, but I find some of our best ideas don't come from my little brain. They come from the field and from the application of what they're doing every day and just describing problems, just being present and kind of putting yourself in the middle of things. And a lot of the times they come up with the best ideas. Hey, this is a real pain that we do this all the time, do this every time. Well, just like the picklebot, that's something that nobody wanted to jump into those big, 120-degree containers and do that. So, hey, what if we tried this? So there's some excitement. So you can find that that mutual alignment to that. But we know that as AI and as technology continues to develop, we're gonna have to continue to look at that. And even if you look at companies like Waste Management, right? Everybody jokes about, my kid, not necessarily being proud if your kid wants to be a garbage truck driver. Well, if you're a garbage truck driver today for Waste Management, you're sitting in a video game console in those trucks. Those are some of the most advanced experiences you can imagine. So I think it's going to be imperative both for the vendors and manufacturers of this kind of technology, as well as for us to continue to look at that and figure out where it goes.
Good points. Mark, I have a question for you, unless you want to add to that.
I do not. Yeah, no.
Okay.
Great.
So this one, how do you quantify the business impact of sustainability investment? So we're going to talk about that. Are customers choosing you because of your ESG metrics, or is it still one of those compliance check boxes that we see out there?
Yes and yes. Okay. How about that? So I would say, as far as ESG metrics, I've not been able to find an ESG metric. I think within ESG, the components of ESG, there are metrics, right? There's metrics around sustainability. There's metrics around safety, which is part of the social aspect of our business and how we treat our employees. So there's components within ESG that can be measured, but I've seen I don't know if you have, Jeff, seen a measurement or a KPI for ESG as a holistic number. So we don't really see that. I mean, it is something that people will ask about. I mean, and some of the larger customers that I'm dealing with, they want to see your ESG report every year. They want to know that you as a company and the people that they're doing business with Veritiv, that we're acting in a certain way. I can't say that we've got major metrics going around it. Now, we do have metrics around sustainability, right? Veritiv has a system called EcoScore, which basically tracks for our customers every dollar that they spend, what percentage of it is from third-party certified sustainable products, right? It's not us saying it; it's a third party that says that. And those are things that we work with our customers to measure and create a KPI around, to see that we're constantly improving the products and processes that we're using. So there's things like that, Jeff, but I can't say there's an ESG measurement that's out there that we're all trying to strive to necessarily.
I'll add to that as well. We have kind of stepped off and found, EcoVadis is a partner that we work with to kind of rate the different aspects of that. As Mark said, there's not one metric, but it's a kind of a conglomeration of. But that looks at our labor practices and our sustainability and our safety programs, and it's been a real key focus for us. Again, at the core, it's our customers, our employees, and all of those things relate to that, as well as the communities we operate in. So looking at where we're giving back and we're empowering our employees to give back through different programs as well into the communities around them. So those are the ways that we've kind of driven a stake in the ground. So it's not just a check the box, or as we say, it's not just a hashtag. To us, it's how we're actually implementing this and putting it into practice. So that it's not just at the end of the year, but those are the ways that we're kind of scraping at it. So to make it can be a check the box if you let it be, but I think it's important if you're really going to be committed to it that you find a way to measure it and find a way to audit that as well.
Sustainability is more than a hashtag. I see that as a title of an article. But
Yeah, Jeff, you heard it here first.
all right, we have time for one more question, then we have to wrap it up. Chris, start us off with this one. When you consolidate vendors for efficiency, how do you avoid creating a fragile supply chain that's over-reliant on fewer partners?
Yeah, I think not to be repetitive, but I think a lot of the same things we've talked about, which is just those reliable relationships we build. We do have a process, a muscle that we develop that we make sure that we're getting the best cost and service, but it's cost and service. Another one of those, not either or, but ands, cost and service that we're evaluating and partnering with our vendors on to make sure that we're getting the right service level. You can get the cheapest price, but maybe you're getting what you pay for too, and it's not a great service. So we want to balance that, and again, make sure that we're not solely sourced into any one particular category, especially key categories, and just continuing to find starting with where the customer is, valuing. The customer speaks to us in terms of value with their dollars and their feet, right? So finding ways to align our key categories with the best suppliers that we can manage both that within each category.
All right. We have 1 minute. Mark, do you want to wrap it up for us?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank ISSA for having Chris and I be able to present to you guys. It's obviously an important part of the business. I think supply chain was something that was, I think, terminology for many people prior to the pandemic, post-pandemic, given labor issues that are out there and other things that are driving our business. Supply chain and integrating your supply chain with all the functions of your company is becoming a much more important part of the business, for not only for us, but it also supports our customers and their goals and needs as well. So again, thanks to ISSA. I'm happy to be have been able to do this, and I know Chris is as well. So
thank you all.
Yeah, thank you both and Veritiv for all of this. Keep up the good work, and I'll see you at Disney.
We'll see you.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye.